Prince Charles misused influence to shield cleric abuse inquiry reports. Now there is a long delayed inquiry going on into paedophilia, basically, in a number of different situations and over a long period of time that includes, it's said, investigations into elite paedophilia, which of course I've been exposing in my books for a long time. And I was interested this week to see this story, Prince Charles misused influence to shield cleric abuse inquiry reports, because of what I've written, not least about the British royal family, in my books over the years. One particular book, which is relevant to this story, is called The Perception Deception, in which I go into this whole elite paedophilia in a very considerably detailed way. And Prince Charles, funnily enough, gets a mention. Prince Charles, this is the story. Let's do the story from this week first. Prince Charles misused his influence to shield Peter Ball, a former Anglican bishop and old friend, from punishment after the cleric had admitted sexually abusing a young novice, an independent inquiry found this week. Well, we'll see when it reports if it's independent or not. In an unusually tough rebuke of the future king, the inquiry concluded that the actions of Prince Charles, or the Prince of Wales as it called him, were misguided. He should have recognised the potential effect that his apparent support for Peter Ball could have had upon decision-making within Lambeth Palace. This is the official home of the Archbishop of Canterbury. The headquarters of the Anglican Church it is. Anyway, that's just what this inquiry concluded, inquiry into child sex abuse, which is led by a professor of social work called Alexis J. The Prince has expressed deep personal regret that he was deceived by Mr. Ball, and he said he had not been aware that any abuse has taken place. As he made clear in his voluntary witness statement to the inquiry, at no time did he bring any influence to bear on the actions of the Church or any other relevant authority. A spokesman for Clarence House, the Prince's administration, told the Press Association. The report details a powerful old boys network that mobilised to defend Mr. Ball, who was first accused of sexual misconduct in 1969, but continued to rise through the church hierarchy for 2 decades. Upon being appointed Bishop of Gloucester in 1991, he was warned that there should be no more boys, the inquiry found. In 1993, Mr. Ball admitted that an act of gross indecency with a 19-year-old and accepted a police caution which allowed him to avoid a criminal trial. He was forced to step down as bishop but returned to the ministry 2 years later, actually within 2 years. Only in 2015, after the investigation was revived, did Mr. Ball plead guilty to indecent assault and misconduct in public office in connection with the abuse of 16 boys and men who had come to him for spiritual guidance. He was sentenced to 32 months in prison but was released on parole after serving half the sentence. The report offers a kind of anatomy of social influence in Britain's power structure, world power structure, because it works the same. Mr. Ball, 87, who attended Lancing College and Cambridge University, was friends with headmasters of many of the country's most prestigious boarding schools and belonged to a private dining club called Nobody's Friends, which met twice a year at the home of the Archbishop of Canterbury. He was close with the Archbishop, George Carey, and Lord Lloyd of Berwick, an appeals court judge. But the most powerful of his friends was Charles, the Prince of Wales. He lived in one of the prince's properties until the late 1990s, after he had been forced to step down until 2011, and preached at the funeral of the prince's second father-in-law, Bruce Shand. Wayne Murdoch, a police detective assigned to the investigation in 1993, anticipated early on that the suspect's powerful friends would try to quash it. The jungle drums will start going and the phone calls will start, he said, according to the report. He wasn't wrong. The report quotes correspondence suggesting that after Mr. Ball was forced to step down as Bishop of Gloucester, the Prince lobbied for him to be returned to the ministry. "I wish I could do more," the Prince wrote at one point. "I feel so desperately strongly about the monstrous wrongs that have been done to you and the way you have been treated." How about the kids, Charlie boy? "It's appalling that the Archbishop has gone back on what he told me before Christmas, that he was hoping to restore you to some kind of ministry in the church. I suspect you are absolutely right. It is due to fear of the media." When questioned as part of the inquiry, Prince Charles played down the significance of their correspondence, saying he answered Mr. Ball's letters, believing it the polite thing to do. Yeah, okay. Investigators, who pored over a large file of correspondence between the two men, said the replies are suggestive of cordiality rather than mere politeness. They noted as well that the Prince's private secretary had made inquiries about Mr. Ball's reinstatement with a top aide to the Archbishop of Canterbury. Within 6 weeks of his resignation, the Archbishop publicly said he hoped to see Mr. Ball return to the ministry. This is the situation that I came across so many times when I've been researching this subject over the years, how when high-profile paedophiles get exposed, because of course the paedophile ring in the so-called upper echelon of British society is absolutely fantastic, and the same in America and the same worldwide. It's indeed, in the end, it's a global ring. And I came across this constant theme that when one of these high-profile paedophiles is on the brink of getting exposed or does get exposed, bingo, the network kicks in to do everything they can to stop him being prosecuted or to shut down the inquiry, which they have done. And one of the ways they do this, by the way, there are many ways, but one of them is you put someone into the public arena as a quote victim who names lots of people, famous people, and especially if you name famous people who you want to protect, and then you expose him as a fraud. And what this does, something like that going on now, what this does is then discredit all the other genuine people who have been talking about their abuse by these people. That's one of the ways that they do it. And what has happened in Britain is that the lid almost came off this paedophile ring of the quote elite, and then step by step they have shut it down and discredited it. And now we have this abuse inquiry, and we'll see how that turns out. Clearly, from how the inquiry was delayed and the methods used to delay it, not least by the current Prime Minister Theresa May when she was Home Secretary, shows that the establishment absolutely doesn't want this inquiry to report the truth. In fact, the inquiry only came about in the first place because so much information came out about elite paedophilia at the time that they were pressured into announcing and establishing the inquiry, and then they delay it to put as much time as possible between the revelations coming out and the report, so that people basically tend to forget it and just move on to other things. But we shouldn't forget it, because when you connect the dots, I mean, it's in your face. You know, I'm reading this story here about Prince Charles, and he's saying that he was misled by this cleric, Peter Ball. Well, it seems that Prince Charles is easily misled, doesn't it, by paedophiles, because he was a very close friend of Jimmy Savile, one of the, if not the most notorious child abuser in British history, who was exposed after his death of historic record levels of child abuse, and worse, because he was a Satanist as well. Jimmy Savile was a BBC celebrity and entertainer, so he say. He was a very, very strange man, and clearly, from what's come out, far stranger than even people that thought he was strange before could comprehend the strangeness of the man and the psychopathy of the man. Anyway, what happened, and this from Savile's own account, is in the 1960s, this record-breaking paedophile and procurer of children for the rich and famous, by the way, that's how he was protected. People ask, decade after decade after decade after decade, he's abusing children. There were times when the police were starting to investigate him, but he always got off. How did he do it? Well, he did it because he was procuring children for the rich and famous. He knew who was doing what, with whom. He had the background on all these people. So the last thing they wanted to come out was their activities. And Savile, being a vindictive man, would have worked on the premise to say, look, if I go down, you lot are all going down. And so everything possible was done to protect him. And then when he died and couldn't speak out anymore, well, the stuff started to come out. And what happened, according to Savile's own words, is that he was introduced to the inner circle of the British royal family by a guy called Lord Mountbatten, who is a known paedophile. And he's known, died a long time ago now, killed by an IRA bomb, the official story goes. And he is said to have been the mentor of Prince Charles, Lord Mountbatten, and the mentor of Prince Philip, Charles's father. And so we have this paedophile, record-breaking paedophile, Jimmy Savile, being introduced to the inner circle of the British royal family by another paedophile, Lord Mountbatten. And he stayed at the bosom centre of the royal family, Savile, for the rest of his bloody life. Hence he became a very close friend of Prince Charles. So you can't go near the royal family without the establishment, special branch, the police special branch, etc., British intelligence, knowing about you. You know, I've seen, reports on the TV, television reports, and in other places like YouTube, where people have turned up to protest at a royal event, and the police have come over. When they arrive, they know all about them. And these are protesters at a royal event. I mean, imagine, how you're looked over and your background known to actually get into the inner circle of the British royal family. But somehow this record-breaking paedophile, Jimmy Savile, managed to do it and stay there for decades, even though there were police investigations into allegations of his paedophile activities, which seem to have been widely known within the establishment. So when Prince Charles came out, again, as with this Peter Ball statement, when the revelations about Savile came out, and said, oh, I didn't know, I should have been told. Well, excuse me, you know, you're talking to someone with a modicum of intelligence, therefore, clearly you're talking crap. They wouldn't have known that Savile was a paedophile of record-breaking proportions by then. Are you having a laugh? So, why has that been brushed over? That's a rhetorical question, by the way. Why has that been brushed over? So that the British royal family were not questioned about their connections to Jimmy Savile, given the staggering revelations of child abuse that came out. And here we have Prince Charles again. Oh, I was misled. Yeah, all right. And the scale of paedophilia, child abuse, in the so-called upper echelons of society is absolutely staggering, for reasons I explain in books like The Perception Deception. So here we have another example of protection of paedophiles by the rich and famous. And it's the tip of 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 the iceberg. If you burrow beyond and below the surface. So I see your statement, Prince of Wales. I don't believe it.